Rudolph Sade of CMA CGM is playing a geopolitical game. I mean, and being able to stand there in the White House and offer $20 billion when he just made $50 billion this past year is a drop in the bucket for him.
My message to the maritime industry, it's our time to lead, but I hope we have people stepping up.
Not the hot take I was looking for, but I'll take it.
Ship Intel is where maritime experts come to discuss, argue, and occasionally fight about all things maritime. We pick a topic, we talk, and a winner is crowned. Joining is maritime historian, professor, old sailor, host of the What's Going On with Shipping YouTube channel, Sal Mercogliano. Also joining is Shipping Intel's data scientist, James Flannery. It's a classic New York battle, Italians versus the Irish.
All right, the Jones Act. Topic isn't new, but as the world changes, it's worth revisiting with their experts. Sal, you're on the clock.
So the Jones Act was the first national maritime strategy ever passed by the United States. And when it was passed, it included everything: international shipping rates, federal oversight. It was everything. Today, what everybody boils it down to is the coastal trade. And I think we need a new national maritime strategy. We need a new Jones Act. But the Jones Act isn't just that coastal trade, it's everything. And that's what we need to focus on. Everybody just wants to hit on the expense. But in truth, a lot of our actions have led to the decline of the maritime sector.
Sal, you said outside of the coastal trade. So out of those, which one do you think needs the most love right now?
Oh, I think it's the international trade aspect. We need to get U.S. ships back into the international trade because that's something that could be done very quickly by reflagging vessels into the U.S. Merchant Marine. We don't have to wait and build ships to get back into that trade.
All right, thank you. James, you're up. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, my favorite word that Sal said was strategy. The Jones Act is a policy. It's a piece of legislature. And if I had to summarize our recent, modern, in the last few decades strategy, it's been maintain the minimum amount of vessels and equipment needed for national economic security. So the strategy is failing, not the piece of legislature. So I'm happy to see that with the Ships Act, and there's a lot more attention and a lot more diving deeper into this, like the book 0 Point North by Jim Watson. We're looking more into the strategy and trying to get past the political talking point of the Jones Act.
With that, how would you change our strategy then?
That's a good question. So I don't have the answer for that, how we would change that.
Why are you on the show? What are you doing here?
He had the shirt. I mean, he had to come on the show. Yeah. I mean, he was properly dressed.
I'm going to chat GPT unless you have something.
I think for me, and I think this is something Sal's talked about in the past, but it's lean into our strengths, right? Do not copy China. Even Korea and Japan, who are competing with China, have a different strategy, right? So their vessels are always 10 years ahead technologically in quality than China. Europe, it goes into different types of vessels than the Chinese built ships, right? So even when we look at all of this together, the amount of ships, it's actually quite different. And so we need to look at our strengths as the U.S. and what technologies that we're developing that will help us regain some of the tonnage.
All right, fair enough. All right, let's listen to what the robot has to say.
The Jones Act is a 1920 solution to a 2025 problem. It made sense for national security then, but now it inflates costs and limits competition. A U.S.-built tanker costs 4 to 5 times more than a foreign one, and with only a handful of U.S. yards left, we're not exactly bolstering domestic shipbuilding. Meanwhile, Puerto Rico and Hawaii pay the price. Literally, protecting jobs is important, but rail security comes from a competitive, resilient industry. Right now, the Jones Act does the opposite.
All right, Sal, thoughts?
I would say, number one, I mean, it's not competitive because China directly and indirectly subsidizes. So while it may be 4 to 5 times the cost, the real cost is nowhere near that. I think one of the things we need to do is make an incentive to hook the ship on U.S. ships, maybe tax incentives, maybe lower the cost so that there is an incentive for people and it doesn't hurt those in Hawaii, Alaska, and Puerto Rico to use a U.S. flag ship.
James, thoughts on that, on what ChatGPT said, but also in regards to what Sal said around incentives?
For this, I would say that this didn't happen overnight. China didn't just start producing the cheapest ships in the world overnight. This took prolonged effort to get to that point. So yes, starting out where we are today, right? We can't be looking at that. Where do we want to go in the future? Our strategy has to be where we're going, and not where what the status quo is today.
All right, round one's in the books. Let's see those scores. Ooh, the robot comes in 2 out of 5. James, 3 out of 5, probably because he didn't have a strategy. And our expert Sal comes in 4 out of 5. Strong start for Sal. Speaking of China, let's move on to our next topic. CMA CGM dropped $20 billion on U.S. investments, but was it a strategy or is it survival? A new U.S. policy slaps $1 million penalty per port call for carriers with 25% Chinese-built ships. CMA CGM, they're at 34%, with 38 more ships on order from China. With 100-plus port calls per week, they're staring down a $5 billion annual hit. That's $20 billion over 4 years. James, thoughts?
For me, everybody's talking about how much they would pay in tariffs and fines, and then they say, all right, well, we'll just use that as an investment. I think what I haven't heard is the talk about influence. Why are we celebrating our investments in Panama? Because it's American influence into their economy. We're now part of their economic discussion, and the risk of doing that with foreign investments into our country. So I think time will tell. Inviting those foreign investments into our country. If something goes bad, we have to bail them out. So I think the jury's still out.
But James, is this going to be a good move by CMA CGM or is it a bad move?
By CMA CGM, I would say it's their best move they have.
All right, Sal, thoughts on on the investment or on anything James said?
I think Rudolph Sade of CMA CGM is playing a geopolitical game. I mean, he's getting protection by the Marine Nationale to sail some of his ships through the Red Sea past the Houthi. It's better to have the U.S. Navy on your side. And being able to stand there in the White House and offer $20 billion when he just made $50 billion this past year is a drop in the bucket for him. He sees this as really cementing his relationship. He's got Macron on his side already. Now he's got Trump on his side. And by offering up 20 ships and potentially building ships in the U.S., I think he solidifies his position as one of the leading container liners in the world.
So with that, are you saying this is a good thing for the U.S., this investment?
I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing for the U.S. I think it's a good thing for CMA CGM. They see it as a good investment.
Is it bad for China? Is that who it's bad for?
Who's losing here?
Someone's got to lose. That's not how the world works, right? Like
I guarantee it's not CMA CGM. They're not going to lose on this. They're going to make money off this one way or the other. That's the one thing that container liners do is they make money.
All right, let's see what the robot has to say.
It's survival disguised as strategy. CMA CGM isn't flexing. They're dodging a financial knockout. That $20 billion isn't just investment, it's ransom. They were staring down $5 billion in annual penalties, so they had two options. Get locked out of the U.S. market or spend big to stay in the game. But let's be real, this wasn't a choice, it was a necessity. The real question, who's next?
But Sal, any rebuttal to the robot?
I think it is something that shipping lines are maneuvering. I mean, these companies have become so big. I mean, this is a company owned solely by Sade. They have to think as geopolitical entities, not just shipping companies anymore. They're akin to the East India Company of old. And so they've got to make very bold strategic moves. I don't think it shuts them out. I think they're trying to figure a way that once those fees come in, that they're in a better advantageous position than their competition. Should also note CMA CGM is in an alliance with Costco, the biggest Chinese shipping line in the world. So there's a little bit of play going on behind the scenes, I think, too.
Excellent. James, final thought? You got to get your stars up. Better be good.
I'm just glad we're getting past the tariffs, right, and talking about influence and some of the bigger things at play here that we need to be aware about and getting past again political talking points. So
all right, time for scoring. ChatGPT robot's having a sad day. She comes in at 1 out of 5 stars. James upped his game there, 4 out of 5 stars. Sal holding the line, 4 out of 5 stars. So going into the last round, James is trailing. ChatGPT robot is having a worse day than when Deep Sea came out. So let's go. What's the biggest technological advancement in the merchant marine history? Sal, we'll go to you first.
Oh, I'm going to go Malcolm McLean in the container. I mean, it just absolutely revolutionized your ability to move cargo around. I think in terms of what changes things more than anything else, it is the container.
It's the container. Oh, the container. We knew she was coming. All right, James, what do you think?
Yeah, so I agree. It's almost a fight for second behind the container, but same with the container and the diesel engine. These took decades to refit ships, new designs. So maybe a slightly different take. I would say AIS as speed of adoption, how fast it was to retrofit these ships and bring transparency to the shipping industry almost overnight. Right?
All right, spoiler alert. ChatGPT also said
Containers. It's obvious. Dumb question.
And then second was diesel engines. I tried to argue with her, but she agreed. So let's get to the more engaging aspect of this then. Is in 100 years, when Sal is asked the question, what was the biggest invention in the past 100 years, what's that answer going to be?
Oh, I would say it's probably nuclear or fission or fusion power for vessels that just makes energy, seamless, no emissions, much more efficient, and you're able to propel it. I mean, we're close to that with modular reactor systems, molten salt or whatever it comes up with. That's a big change. I think what we're doing right now is trying to cram that in with IMO, but I think if we can get to nuclear, that'll be the big change. It's always been tech. It's always been propulsion that really changes things in a big way.
Okay, always propulsion, but we all picked containers, but that's fine, guys. All right, James, you're on the clock.
So again, I would say the propulsion aspect, but I'm gonna take a different take here. I'm gonna say something with material science. Hopefully, like with AI and the new, promised scientific discoveries with AI. Hopefully, we can find some materials to make the ships more reliable, more resilient to the environment, cheaper to make.
Yeah, James, we just saw an article last week about bringing on 3D printers on board ships to create their own spare parts and kind of chipping into some of them.
It's got to deaden the vibration on the ships to make those things really work really well.
I remember I was trying to weld on a ship. And I sucked at welding to begin with, but then doing it on a ship was impossible,
Navy brought a 3D printer out, and that's the problem they had. It was just the ship was shaking so much, it didn't quite work really well.
Yeah.
But I would say the same thing is, the vibrations, but also the material science behind 3D printing, right? Being able to hold pressure and just, having the defects or being able to track and repair defects in some of these things. If we could, if there's some revolution or discoveries in material science, I think that would, that'll have a huge impact.
All right, let's see the rounds. ChatGPT didn't even make it. 0 out of 5 stars on this round. We'll give James for bringing up some scientific term I didn't quite understand a 5 out of 5. We'll keep Sal leading the way with his 4s. No, we're just playing. Sal's our 5 out of 5 winner. So round of applause. Sal, what we like to do with the winners is just give you the floor, 20 seconds to thank someone who's been instrumental in your career or in your life, to just kind of give a shout out to.
My good buddy John Conrad, who gave me a platform to kind of start talking about this. I thank him for that. I just had the 4th year anniversary of my show. Matter of fact, today marks 4 years when John and I went on after the Ever Given got stuck in the Suez, and that's kind of propelled me up to where I am today. And as always, I thank my wife for being behind me all the time, backing me up 32 years.